was born here in Davao City. I grew up in Digo City, 60 kilometers from Davao. Early on, when I was a boy, there were already Moro peoples who were living across where my family lived. They were people who came from Jolo and came to settle down there in Digos. And I had some interaction with the young Moro people. So early on, I already had some exposure to them. The same with the indigenous people or the Lumad, because where we were living was not too far away from a set of mountains surrounding the municipality where the Lumad were living. What was then an early interest in college became an advocacy, because at the time, development incursion was already penetrating these Lumad areas, because remember during the early years and the middle years of the Marcos martial law years, there was this concept of development. But from the perspective of the indigenous people, this was development incursion, namely corporate firms, government projects penetrating the countryside where the Lumad communities were and would dislocate them. So this time I joined a much more militant organization, which ironically was a church organization, the Mindanao Sulu Pastoral Conference Secretariat. At a time when a number of both Protestant and Catholic missionaries, Jesuits, Colombans, Maryknoll, were really becoming more and more present among our indigenous people. So there was a lot of documentation we were doing, human rights violations, and naturally I got myself into trouble. I got arrested in Lake Cebu. When martial law was declared because of our work there in Mati, I got arrested. I would be arrested much longer later on, 22 months in prison. But part of that was both my human rights advocacy work and HRV in relation to the work we were doing for Lumad advocacy, especially stopping all of this development incursion. We began to set up some kind of a network of civil society organizations, and we tested this idea of applying for a certificate of ancestral domain claim in some of the areas. So when the law was passed, the more we became much more involved. Because, when you deal with the poverty, inequality situation of indigenous people, the crucial issue really is land. But there's another field now that sort of opened up in terms of our work with indigenous people, and this is through the efforts of what we have called ourselves the indigenous. It's a coined term putting together towards indigenous and genius. We're coming from the basic assumption that because of their indigenous knowledge, skills, and practices, our Lumad brothers and sisters have wisdom, have knowledge, because long before even educational establishments were set up, they knew already how to take care of illnesses and diseases that arise in their community. They have a way of dealing with Mother Nature in terms of cultivating the land, which today is called organic farming. So we're setting up and we're beginning already what we call Balay Kinaadman, literally houses of knowledge, of wisdom, which is really a term to encompass a library, a laboratory, and an audiovisual. So if you speak about indigenous children before, say in the last 20 years who have finished college, and maybe a few in terms of an MA in the fields of anthropology, history, and so on, there would be fewer. We now have lawyers and nurses and teachers from among them, and especially Pamulaan. Pamulaan is an indigenous school attached to a state university in Davao, the University of Southeastern Philippines, and it's been there already also for about 10 years. We've graduated almost 100 Lumad kids in the field of agriculture, social enterprise, applied anthropology. And they've been fielded back to their communities who sponsor their coming to Pamulaan.
Sinasabi ko po sa aking sarili na kailangan ko talagang mag-aral upang pagbalik ko sa aking community. Maybe ako ang maging susi para mabago po namin ang aming community.
Kagaya po din ko sa mga kasamahan ko is gusto ko yung i-impart kung ano yung natutunan ko sa agriculture kasi isa din yung agriculture na problema sa amin. Hindi po ganun ka yung knowledge ng komunidad namin in terms sa agriculture.
At sa pamamagitan ng formal education na pagkuha ng degree is alam ko namin na makakatulong kami na ma-uplift yung kanilang pangkabuhayan, may iahon sa kahirapan ng aming komunidad, hindi lang sa aming pamilya sa sarili, kundi sa aming komunidad at sa buong ekonomiya ng Pilipinas.
You have to be able to construct new knowledge with your new experiences that comes out from a really babad from praxis, from immersion. So I have tried my best within whatever little time left to write. So I've been able to produce, and from feedback you get, it seems helpful, useful. For myself, when I'm in the classroom, I know that there's a body of experience, my personal experience, that I can use. If one is to ask the question, how come after some interventions on the part of the government, the work done by civil society organizations and by the indigenous peoples themselves through their leaders, how come we are here 2017 and the majority of our indigenous peoples still are poor, impoverished, pushed to the periphery? My own reflection here, and it's very much there in the Panagkutay book, is this, that the manner that our republic operates today in terms of its governance system, the legal system in terms of laws, not just the passing of laws, but the implementation of the laws, the type of economic policies in terms of what development programs to introduce, access to education, to health, everything that is constitutive of how we run a state, a government, is such that does not take in the indigenous people as active participants.